this is the subjunctive 2, and this is your first set of irregular verbs in the subjunctive. You'll get just 4 in this lesson, and then we'll talk about past subjunctive. So your conjugations of the irregular verbs. For être, you have soit, soit, soit with a T, soyons, soyez, soit. Avoir, pronounced A. Super common mistake here. People want this one to be AIE, just like the je conjugation, but it has a T. Ayons, ayez, aille. Allez, aille, aille, aille. Allions, allier, aille. So you'll notice that this is a boot verb. Inside the boot you have the I before the double L, whereas outside the boot you have the I after the double L. And faire, face, 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 fassions, facier, face. So the reason we're going to talk about the subjunctive passé with this group of verbs is because le subjonctif passé est un temps composé. It's the compound tense, so it has a helping verb and a past participle. Le verbe auxiliaire est avoir ou être conjugué au subjonctif présent. So when you're conjugating the past subjunctive, what you're going to use is, switch colors here, the conjugation of être or the conjugation of avoir in the present subjunctive, just as you have right here, plus the past participle. Exact same past participles that we used for all our other compound tenses in the indicative. Exact same distinction between when to use avoir and when to use être, being that the Dr. Mrs. Vandertramp verbs are the verbs that use être, and le reste des verbes, the rest of the verbs, use avoir. So as an example, manger, you're going to conjugate it as j'ai, the subjunctive conjugation of avoir. Manger, j'ai mangé. Aller, being with être, is going to be nous soyons. Aller, with an S for past participle agreement. Lire uses avoir, use a, lu. Sortir, elle soit. Sorti, with an E for agreement. Prendre, tu es pris. Mettre, vous ayez mis. So it looks just like the passé composé, except that you're conjugating your helping verb into the present subjunctive instead of the present indicative. All right, for the next one, I wrote these out ahead of time just to save a little bit of time. There are some things that I want to say about them, but this would be a good time for you to pause and write them down, and then come back to the video to hear the explanation. Okay, so what I did here is I bolded the infinitives for you, because what's different from this group of expressions than what you had the first time is these are verbs that you're going to have to conjugate. Remember that these are the expressions that go at the beginning of the subjunctive sentence, which means that they're going to be conjugated in the indicative. And then the verb that comes after the que will be what goes into the subjunctive. So the way that we've been conjugating vouloir, désirer, all of these verbs beforehand, as you've done for the past 2 years, is how you're going to conjugate them. I'll show you those conjugations if you need a refresher on them. I put them on a separate document, subjunctive 2 verbs. So vouloir, the present indicative for vouloir, je veux, tu veux, il l'on veut, nous voulons, vous voulez, ils veulent. Être, je suis, tu es, il l'on est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. Avoir, I'm skipping crown on purpose for a minute. J'ai, tu as, il a. Nous avons, Vous avez, ils ont. So this is the indicative conjugation. This is what you saw through French 1 and 2. This is what goes at the beginning of the sentence. So if we go back to these expressions, vouloir que, to want that. So this is when you're saying, I want that, you do something. You want that, I do something. We want that, they do something. So the wanting is in the indicative. That's the expression of emotion. And what follows the expression of emotion is going to be in the subjunctive. The verbs that I did not put on the other page, désirer, aimer, préférer, souhaiter, regretter, those are regular ER verbs. So your normal E, ESE, ONS, EZ, ENT. I gave you vouloir. Être you're going to use in these expressions here. Avoir you're going to use in that one. Avoir peur. And then craindre. This is a verb. I generally discourage students from calling things weird in a foreign language, but this is one where I'm willing to call this conjugation a little bit weird. This is the verb to fear. Now you can totally avoid this verb by using avoir peur, but if you want to conjugate craindre, it's craint, 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 craignons. I have no idea where that G comes from. That's why I'm willing to call it weird. It's probably something from Latin, which usually that's what I do when I don't know where a word comes from, is I blame Latin. So we have craignons, craignez, craigne. So these are the conjugations that you'll use before the que. Use it at the beginning of the expression. The other thing that I want to point out for you guys is these ones that use être. We have être content or heureux, être triste, être désolé, être fâché or furieux, être surpris or étonné. These are all adjectives, so to be happy, to be sad, to be sorry, to be angry, to be surprised. When you go to conjugate these, if you want to say, for example, she is happy. So I want to say, elle est, and we'll use heureux for the example here because I want to remind you that heureux, the masculine, becomes heureuse for the feminine. So for both heureux and furieux that end in an X, the feminine form will end in SE. So if that had been elles sont heureuses, would look like that, for they are happy. Surpris, because it ends in an S, if they are happy, if they are surprised, ils sont surpris, you won't add another S to that adjective. But generally speaking, for these adjectives, if it's feminine, we're going to add an E. If it's plural, we're going to add an S, which is going to be important along with the conjugation of the verb. Your adjective agreement is going to be important as well. So I'm going to get these examples off there so I can do the ones down at the bottom of the page. So if we want to say, I am sorry that you are sick, we find our expression for to be sorry. We can either use être désolé que or regretter que. I'll write it both ways. We could start off our sentence with je suis désolé que, or we could start it with je regrette que. Both are equally correct. So I'm sorry that you are sick. Now, after the que is where we're going to use the subjunctive. So je suis désolé que, or je regrette que, tu sois, so we're using être in the subjunctive, que tu sois malade. It is a pity that we lost. Lost is going to be the passé du subjonctif. So the expression for it is a pity that. For these two right here, I didn't put anything in bold. They're already conjugated as it is a pity. It is unfortunate that. C'est dommage que, c'est malheureux que. So you don't have to change those. You don't have to conjugate those. You just take the expression as it is, just like the very first group, the subjunctive one expressions. You didn't have to change those. These two at the bottom, you don't have to change. So it is a pity. C'est dommage que we lost. Que nous ayons, and the verb to lose is perdre. Que nous ayons perdu. And they are happy that I can go to the party. That's a mistake because we haven't seen the verb, we haven't seen pouvoir yet. So they're happy that I go to the party. Sounds awkward in English, but it's going to work okay in French. So they are happy. Ils sont. We can use content or heureux. I'm going to use heureux just to point out that, like surpris ending in an S, heureux and furieux ending in an X for the masculine plural will not change. We don't add an S to them. So ils sont heureux que, that I go, que j'aille à la fête. Okay, those are your examples. Then this practice we're going to save for next class. You're not going to complete this. What you're going to turn in is your notes, the first 2 pages here that shows that you followed along with this video and you have your notes. Turn that in and then you'll be all set and you'll be ready to go on Friday.